What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG, channel down there, and I've been waiting to use that intro song for like forever now. Today a triple tech. I love doing these. This is our third one, and as usual, what I'll do is I'll give you a budget deck, very budget deck. I'll give you a deck that's sort of in the middle of the budget range, and then I'll give you a high-end competitive deck. Although the competitive deck isn't even going to cost you that much this time around. Our three decks today in order are Monogreen Stompy for just $35, Monogreen Eldrazi Ramp for about $120, and then Monogreen Collected Company for about $180. Start with the budget deck as usual. Monogreen Stompy. This has been a favorite of players since like 1997, you know, even before then. We just called it like Monogreen Creatures, you know, beat down, that was the name for the deck for a while by Igby. But in any case, we've got a lot of really good green creatures in this format to sort of emulate this strategy, and a lot of them come at a fairly reasonable price. So let's go ahead and get started with the creatures. We're playing 28 of them in the deck. That's how these decks usually go. And we'll start with a couple of landfall guys. We're going to play 4 copies of Scythe Leopard, and we're going to play 4 copies of Snapping Gnarlid. Scythe Leopard, I think, is just the best one-drop for an aggressive green deck in the format by a lot. There's really not much competition, you know. And Snapping Gnarlid is a pretty good value creature, you know, especially on from the early game into the mid-game. He's usually a 2-mana 3/3, which is fantastic. They definitely are good value creatures, especially Gnarlid, who is like more consistent than he looks. These are both good budget creatures, and I want him to sort of start off the curve in this deck. We're going to play 4 Lambholt Pacifist in the deck. Pacifist is awesome, man. 2-mana 4/4 is actually like the craziest deal ever. So, just, you know, as far as, you know, a great uncommon piece that's not going to cost us hardly anything to play, this is a good piece. Pacifist has really proven how good it is in this format. It's a fantastic card. We're going to play 4 copies of Duskwatch Recruiter. Speaking of a card that's proven itself in the format, this is maybe the best uncommon available to us in this entire format. You know, card advantage. We're playing 28 creatures in the deck, so we're going to find creatures off of Recruiter. And card advantage is always what a thing like this wants. You know, consistently draw more creatures and gum up the board and just win stalemates. And Duskwatch Recruiter is good at that. And when he flips over, helping us play our creatures for a little bit cheaper is good. And he gets bigger too. So just a busted uncommon. You know, into the 3 drops here. We're playing 4 copies of Tireless Tracker, which is just incredible. Like, I played Tireless Tracker a lot in making these 3 green decks. And Tireless Tracker is like one of my new favorite cards. Like, the card is just ridiculous. Sometimes it gets huge and wins the game by itself, you know. But I have just really liked Tireless Tracker because it's a thing that facilitates itself, gives you card advantage, gives you something to do with your mana. Just love everything about this guy, especially for just 3 mana. Still in the 3 drops, I'm just going to play 2 copies of Managorger Hydra. And that's because I specifically had an empty slot here at 3 drop. I wanted to play another 3 drop creature and give us 6 3 drops. I feel like, especially for a budget, Managorger Hydra is what we want to play. Now, if we weren't on a budget, I'd probably play Nissa Vastwood Seer. But since we are constrained a little bit, I think this is the other good 3-drop that we can play. And again, over the course of a longer game, this will get huge. Occasionally, you know, it's definitely a target for spot removal. But sometimes this thing will get pretty big if left unchecked over the course of the game. And just as another way of getting a big creature. So that's exactly what green beatdown wants. But a lot of people love Managorger Hydra. You know, I've made a lot of green decks. And people in the comments are always like, Managorger Hydra? At this time, I definitely think that those people are right. We need another 3-drop, and I think this is the way to go. Unless you have Nissas. On to the 4-drop. Here's Surrak, the Hunt Caller. We're going to play a 3 of this, and this is another one of my favorite cards in the deck. People that are friends of the channel will know that I've liked this card for a really long time, and I always wish that he would be a real thing in Standard. He's a 4-mana, 5-power guy. That's good, too. You'll easily fulfill his Formidable. It's not hard at all. Just why don't more people play Surrak? I just never understood why more people don't play this guy. He's incredible. Seriously. You pretty much say the exact same thing about this guy, too, but this guy is much newer than Surrak. Bear with me here. Ready your dislike button, but don't hit it just yet. Because this guy I wanted to test with, and I know I'm building suspense here, but this guy I wanted to test with, and once I did, I decided that he's actually been written off a little too much in the format. This guy's really actually been fantastic in this deck, and I'll tell you why. We're playing 3 copies of Sage of Ancient Lore in the deck. This is our only 5-drop, you know, this tops off the curve for us. And this has been great. Will often come into play as a, you know, a 5-mana 6/6 after it draws you the card. That's great. You know, we've got a bunch of pieces in this deck that give us card advantage. You know, we've got Tireless Tracker, we've talked about that. We've also got Confront the Unknown in the spell base, that's card advantage. And we're playing Duskwatch Recruiter, also card advantage. So we're keeping our hand count relatively high throughout the game, and this guy can be enormous. The guy has been fantastic, can often be huge the moment you play him and draw you the cards. I don't want to babble too much about this guy, just try him out for yourself before writing him off, because in this deck specifically, with all the card advantage available to us, this card is great. But on into the spells here. We've got 8 slots for spells in the deck. And I want to do a couple of different things. You know, beatdown decks definitely want to have some sort of pump spell, and I've already mentioned Confront the Unknown. Sometimes the creature can get really big depending on what stage of the game we're in, you know. This card is really good for just the 1 mana and is another way, again, of providing card advantage. This time for really, really cheap. And to finish off the spells here, we're playing 4 copies of Rabid Bite. This card definitely has its fans, and I can see why. I've tested with the card a little bit now, and you know, it does require a guy to be out, but sometimes very consistently it feels like a Grasp of Darkness, you know, or it'll feel like, say, you know, a pseudo Bile Blight, you know, 2 mana for, you know, basically 3 damage, a lightning strike in a way. So this has actually been nice in just clearing out smaller dudes, especially in the early game. Sometimes we'll Rabid Bite on like turn 4 and take out an Advocate that hasn't gotten big yet. So not a bad card really at all. There's probably other things that could go in the slot, and you could do, you know, more creatures if that's what you wanted. But I just felt like we had the room for the spell, and since we're on a budget, we can't play like Collected Company or anything. This is one of the better things we can play if we just want some removal in a green deck. We're playing 24 lands in this thing, and I really have liked the Blighted Woodland. You know, it started off with a 2 of Blighted Woodland, and it went up to a 4 of really quick, because not only do we have Scythe Leopard, we have Snapping Gnarlid, we also have Tireless Tracker, so we get like multiple clues. So all of this, all of this, really good. You know, Blighted Woodland is great, and also obviously Evolving Wilds. Multiple tricks with that card as well. So I want to play all of these land fetch cards that we can, and then the rest we'll just throw some forests in. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not covering sideboards for all 3 decks or anything, but I will take this time to sort of talk about some cards that are often in green sideboards, especially mono-green sideboards. Starting with a couple of things that take out artifacts and enchantments. You know, you'll see sometimes Natural State, sometimes Root Out. In this deck, I would definitely play Root Out because of the clue synergy, and it can take out things like Pyromancer's Goggles too. That can sometimes be important. But both of these things you see kind of a lot in green sideboards. Something I like to play in green sideboards is Display of Dominance. You'll see that occasionally. Good against things like Sorin, good against Jace, you know. A lot of Planeswalkers in the format this works well against. Display has also been pretty good. Clip Wings and Plummet. Also, you'll see a lot. Clip Wings because it takes out Ojutai, but Ojutai not the force that he once was, you know. You'll still see Plummet in a lot of green sideboards. You'll still see Clip Wings too, but these are both fine cards that do similar things. Ulvenwald Mysteries, something that you'll see in green sideboards, and especially I would play it in this one. Any heavy creature-based deck, Ulvenwald Mysteries is great. Plus, again, we get the extra clue synergy from this, so that's good too. The power rankings on the first deck here. A final score of 59 points, not bad for a deck that's going to cost you anywhere between about $35 and $40 on TCG Player. My card rang up 38 something, you know. I really should just like screenshot that and put it up when I say that, because I've been saying that lately. But anyway, my card rang up 38 something. But the deck is fairly powerful, honestly. I mean, 28 creatures is a lot. We don't have the power of things like Collected Company, but we do pretty well for a budget deck. We especially hold down the ground well. We got a lot of big, efficient dudes for their mana cost, which is really good. We've got a lot of ways to draw cards and some clue synergies in there. So a lot of different things going for us in the deck, and it's a blast to play. That's one deck down. Let me know how you felt about Monogreen Stompy in the comments down there. Again, deck is fairly powerful for its cost and for what it's trying to do. But on to the next one here. This is, you could say the same thing of this deck, actually. This deck is actually fairly cost efficient. Doesn't cost you that much at all to build. And again, super fun to play. And this one actually has a lot of huge threats. This is Mono Green Eldrazi Ramp. It'll cost you about $120 on TCG Player right now. What's a ramp deck without the creatures? Let's go ahead and start it off. We're playing 13 creatures in the deck, and I'm going to start from the top down of the mana curve, because that's what matters in ramp decks. And I might as well tell you, we're playing 4 copies of Ulamog. In this deck especially, you know, most ramp decks play 4 Ulamogs, because he's just the biggest, dumbest ramp target we can possibly try and hit for in this format. We're shooting for the moon, but if we hit it, we're probably going to win. This guy, just resolving an Ulamog wins the game, like 9 times out of 10, literally. We're also playing 4 Worldbreaker in the deck, just like all the other ramp decks do in the format. You know, 4 Ulamog, 4 Worldbreaker, pretty standard. Worldbreaker, one of the only interactive pieces that we have, and if they do manage to kill it, we can bring it back and kill something else. Bust something important to them 9 times out of 10, and is a huge guy they now have to deal with. So Worldbreaker, great ramp target, and we'll get to him pretty fast. I'm playing 3 copies of Ulvenwald Hydra in the deck. This card is good, man. This card is just straight up good. I was playing Tireless Tracker main deck, but I would move him to the sideboard in this deck, because this thing is just freaking crazy. It took over the slot from Tireless Tracker. I was playing 3 Tireless Tracker. And then I moved it to 2 Tireless Tracker, 1 Ulvenwald Hydra, and I just decided that Hydra is insane. You know, we want to play our turn 3 by playing this as Pilgrimage, ramping in some way or another. No matter what we're doing, we want to play, use our turn 3 ramping. There's just a problem with Tireless Tracker in the deck where there was no right time to play the guy in the scheme of things. But this, on the other hand, much better. We can get to turn to 6 mana very early in the game, sometimes turn 4. So Ulvenwald Hydra will come down, be a huge guy because of all the lands. He'll only get better as the game goes on. When he comes into play, he can search up that 7th land, often a Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, and then we'll have enough mana to play Worldbreaker. So he just facilitates so much in the deck. Getting us from 6 to 7 mana is actually really important. Getting us from Ulvenwald Hydra to a Worldbreaker is important. Not only that, he's a huge guy, and he's a Hydra, and everybody likes Hydras. So the last card I'm playing in the deck, though, as far as creatures go, is 2 copies of Reality Smasher. It's just been fantastic. Reality Smasher is great right now because Madness isn't what we thought it was going to be. We just don't see too much of it right now in the format, so we don't have to worry about that as much. And, we lost Crackling Doom with the rotation a couple of months back, so Reality Smasher got better there. Automatically 2-for-1s them. And aside from that, he's just a 5/5 haste. There's just nothing to not like about this guy. So he'll come down very early in the game, sometimes again turn 4 pretty easily. So, just easier definitely than Ulvenwald Hydra. So just the card is fantastic, and I want to play at least a couple of copies of it because it's a real threat. But we got to get to all these huge guys, so we got to play a bunch of ramp spells. We're playing 23 spells in all, a lot of which do ramp, but some of which serve a dual purpose. But there is a fairly standard staple of, ramp pieces in the format right now, so I'm going to run through these really quick. We're playing 3 copies, first of all, of Nissa's Pilgrimage in the deck. That's sort of a no-brainer, Turn 3, this can set us up into turn 5 sometimes, so that's good. And we'll get the Spell Mastery with all these other spells in the deck if we play it a little bit later in the game. Along with Explosive Vegetation, we're playing 4 of that, the other important green ramp card in the format. Puts us up 2 lands. It's kind of all there is to it, Just you don't have to say anything about vegetation other than you have to play it. Along with, again, another important card, 4 copies of Hedron Archive, maybe my favorite ramp piece in the format right now. Not only can this get us the 2 mana, obviously putting us up 2 mana is important. This and Explosive Vegetation do the same thing. This is Pilgrimage can put us up 2 under certain circumstances. So putting us up 2 is very important in the deck. And this does exactly that, and once it's fulfilled its purpose, it can draw us 2 cards. Sometimes if we've got all the mana in the world, but we don't have a big ramp piece yet, we can go ahead and sacrifice our Hedron Archive, draw 2 cards, and then try and, draw into a big ramp piece. So everything about Archive's great. But here's a weird one. We're playing 3 copies of Ruin in Their Wake in the deck. Important because we get to play Waste in the deck and playing at least a few, And Evolving Wilds helps us get our Waste, Evolving Wilds turn 1, go get a Waste. Turn 2, Forest, Ruin in Their Wake. Can be a rampant growth in that case, and a fan-freaking-tastic card, too. This allows us to do things like Hedron Archive or Explosive Vegetation on turn 3, which can really get the jump on things, A lot of ramp decks in the format don't have the ability to play Ruin in Their Wake because they don't play Waste. We can, so in sometimes, we can be faster than those decks. But back to our regularly scheduled program. This is another important card in green ramp decks. 2 copies of Nissa's Renewal. Gains us a bunch of life, especially against aggressive decks, can really get us back in the game. Puts us up 3 lands, which is crazy. Obviously, if you have the mana to cast this, you'll get to 9 mana. You'll just be 1 mana away from your Ulamog at that point. So, really freaking stupidly great card. And we're playing the whole 2 copies of it in this deck because we want to see it. We get to 6 mana easily, and that 7 life is actually super duper important. Another ramp piece, sort of. This one definitely serves multiple purposes. This is Warping Wail, and we're playing 4 copies of it in the deck. Mostly because it's really good ramp. This puts us up by 1, can sometimes be a chump blocker, can sometimes be removal, which we don't really get to play too much of. I really liked playing this in Blue Ulamog, that deck. And it's no different here. It just does so many different things, and also the thing we need it to do. So, card is a definite must play. It is also, by the way, before I move on, another way of getting to Explosive Vegetation or Hedron Archive on turn 3, an important thing for the deck to be able to do. And to finish off the main deck, we're playing 3 copies of Spatial Contortion in the deck, a way of playing removal in a mono green deck. You know, I like being able to do that. I explained that with Rabid Bite. Same thing here, but it does, again, a dual purpose here in this deck. Not only can it clear out smaller creatures on their side of the board, but every single creature that we're playing, it can augment in such a way that it doesn't die, but the power gets much, much higher. So, you know, any creature that goes unblocked or anything like that, we can just deal a lot more damage with all at once, so at instant speed. But mostly, we're using this as early game removal, but good that we can do a couple of different things with it. Into the lands here, we're playing 24 lands in the deck. You know, I think we can get away with 24 because of all the ramp pieces that we have. It's worked so far. A lot of ramp decks will play 24 lands. Some 25, but I'm sticking with 24 here. And it's the standard fare. You know, Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, incredibly important. And I actually really like Spawning Bed in this deck, I gotta tell you. Spawning Bed has actually been really good. I'd like it to be a 4 of. I just don't want to decrease the forests anymore, to be honest. You know, we're sort of shoving in waste so that we can profitably play Ruin in their wake. And if we do that, it's hard to play any more forests, it's hard to play any more spawning beds, but I really think it's that important to be able to play Ruin in your wake. We have basically 8 ways of getting that on turn 2 in the land base. Here's the power rankings for this deck right here. A final score of Nintendo 64, and it definitely earns all those points, and it's fairly, you know, budget in this format right now. $120. My card rang up like $117.82. I'm trying to remember exactly. $117.82 or thereabouts. Again, I should really just post a screenshot. But anyway, this deck has been, again, a powerful ramp deck in the format. We get to play Ruin in their wake, we get to play Ulamog, Ulvenwald Hydra, Worldbreaker, Spatial Contortion, Warping Wail. There's so many good pieces. And don't forget, you can check the description for the sideboards if you're into it. And if you didn't know, newer people to the channel, you can always check my description. I've got the entire deck list in the description. And for this one, I'll have all 3 deck lists, plus sideboards and mana bases and all that. But in any case, we got one more deck. Let's go ahead and close it out. This is Monogreen Collected Company. Altogether, this deck will run you about 180, 175, 180 on TCG Player, and most of that is Collected Company and like Sylvan Advocate. You know, that's pretty much the entire budget that we're blowing right there. There's a couple of other things, you know, that are fairly expensive in the deck, but for the most part, still less than $200 is not that much to pay for a pretty competitive deck. So let's jump right into it. We're playing 33 creatures in the deck, and I might as well go ahead and tell you actually that we're only playing 4 spells in total, and that is Collected Company. Why don't I go ahead and tell you about this, right? Definitely the probably best card in the format right now. We see a bunch of important decks, whether it's, you know, 4-color right will often play Collected Company, mostly every time. Green-Black Aristocrats plays Collected Company, Band Company, obviously, Abzan Company's a deck. Even Jund Company, I've seen that, but just a lot of powerful decks play this card because it can just wreck combat steps. It can be really good at the end of their turn, you know, in response to certain plays, creatures, or spells, you know. So just Collected Company, they always have to worry about if you've got 4 mana up. We've got a lot of cool creatures that have like, you know, the battlefield triggers or just pure value creatures in green. So I think we can make a mono green CoCo deck, and it can be pretty darn good. Like I said, 33 creatures, and we'll start with 4 copies of Sylvan Advocate in the deck. One of the best creatures in the entire format, we definitely got to play it in this deck, is sort of Tarmogoyfian, you know, starts the game fairly small, actually starts the game with pretty good stats for its mana cost, and only gets better from there, you know. So Sylvan Advocate for just the 2 mana, definitely something we want to play. I'm playing 4 Snapping Gnarlid in this deck too, you know, it's just a 2 mana for a guy that again can often be a 3/3 and sometimes a 4/4, you know, if he plopped an Evolving Wilds or something. So I really like Snapping Gnarlid a lot. Playing 4 of Elvish Visionary in the deck, like all the CoCo decks do. You know, this can come up the ground early. Drawing us a card is insanely important, I'm telling you. So all the decks that play CoCo play this. I don't think we should be any different. We're definitely going to play Visionary. As far as other creatures, we're also playing 4 Duskwatch Recruiter, right? I mean, again, 33 creatures in the deck. It feels like it's a, you know, just a prerequisite. We have to play Duskwatch Recruiter. The card is ridiculous in exactly this situation. And again, card advantage ain't bad. We're playing 4 copies of Lambholt Pacifist in this deck as well, another 2-drop creature. Again, a 3/3 that becomes a 4/4. Good with Sylvan Advocate and good with a couple of the other creatures we're playing. So, yes, you're in, buddy. Here's a tired old team we haven't seen in a while. There's 3 copies of Den Protector and 4 copies of Death Mist Raptor in the deck. Den Protector looks wonky because if you hit him off company, he's not very good. But if you just got him in your hand, he can do one of the best things ever, which is get Collected Company back from your graveyard so you can play it again. Obviously, too, Den Protector synergizes with Death Mist Raptor. And Raptor is really good with Collected Company. Great target for Collected Company to hit. and really good during their combat step is sort of pseudo removal. Death Mist is, but great play in that you can play your Death Mist or your Den Protector, flip him up, get your Collected Company back into your hand, and then your Death Mist Raptor into play. That's just, that is all the value in the world. So these cards all work well together, and we're going to do it because they're good. You know what else is good? Tireless Tracker. I've talked about this a few times in this video already, extensively. We're going to play 4 copies of TT in the deck, Tire Tracks. And why not? These company decks tend to go fairly long, and this is just, again, along with Duskwatch Recruiter, another great form of card advantage. I'm telling you, go ahead and get Tire Tracks, because he's going to be around in the format for a while, and he's just a great 3-drop green creature. But to finish off the deck, we're going to play 2 copies of Nissa Vastwood Seer. A great Collected Company target. Is good with Tireless Tracker, by the way. You go get a land, you play it, Tireless Tracker investigates. That's cool. Also good with Snapping Gnarlid. Can facilitate Snapping Gnarlid next turn. So all of that's pretty nice. But good synergies. Once this does flip, another form of card advantage. Deck has a lot of that, just like the budget deck. And also a way of putting a 4/4 creature out, a big win condition, and also good synergy with Lambholt Pacifist. Lots of good synergies with Vastwood Seer right now, and it's just a way to win the game, honestly. So we need a few of those. Just later on in the game becomes crazy, and early in the game, pretty good value creature that can block and go get you a force to smooth out your mana curve. So everything about this is awesome. There's 23 lands in the deck, though. Let's talk about those real quick. I want a bunch of green sources in the deck, and Blighted Woodland isn't as good in this deck, although we're playing a lot of the same cards. I guess we're not playing Scythe Leopard, just wanted to make room for more forest, basically. That's it. And here's the power rankings for the CoCo deck. A final score of 66, pretty good score right there, definitely competitive. Altogether, the deck's going to cost about $180 on TCG Player, in that realm somewhere. 180 is actually not that too much to ask for basically an introduction to CoCo decks. That's what this feels like. It's no bank company. Those decks are very high up on the power scale. Same thing with Green-Black Aristocrats. It plays company very high up on the power scale. This is sort of a little bit less, but can still win games and can teach you how to play, sort of cerebrally with Collected Company. Collected Company is actually a pretty skill-intensive card and deck to have to play. You have to know the right time to do things, basically. It's not just play your creatures and go like derp, derp, derp. No, you actually have to have a plan with Collected Company. And the sort of, the build is very important with Collected Company decks too. So you have to sort of maximize your chance of drawing the most impactful creatures that you could CoCo at any given time. Which is sort of what I've tried to do here. We're playing 4 of all the most important stuff. I think we made it. That is all 3 decks for you right now. Let me know which one was your favorite in the comments section. I'm actually rooting for Stompy, but that Monogreen Eldrazi ramp deck, try that out. Try that out if you've got the pieces for it. That is actually an incredibly powerful deck that might not win a Grand Prix anytime soon or anything, but could wreck your FNM, I promise you that. And that budget Stompy deck, just for $35-40, is gonna win you some games, man. And it's gonna, Sage of Ancient Lore is gonna impress you. I promise you. Anyway, that's all I've got for now, guys. Let me know what you'd like to see me do here coming up soon. I'm open to any and all suggestions, but I do have top 10 uncommons and Shadow Standard coming up, as well as a Crawling Sensation double deck tech. I've really been experimenting a lot with that card lately. So if you enjoyed the content, you want to see more, like it, share it. That'd be great. Comment on it, and sub if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.